She wasn't supposed to remember. She wasn't supposed to survive. And she definitely wasn't supposed to run. For 5 years, they kept her drugged in a cabin at the edge of nowhere, a ghost with no name, no past, no future. Every full moon, something inside her tried to claw its way out, and every morning her handler made sure she forgot the screaming. But tonight, she heard the truth. Someone powerful wants her dead. Someone royal. So Elara Voss makes the choice that will change everything. She runs. Stay with us until the end to see how a forgotten girl becomes a queen. Drop a like and comment your city below. The cabin smelled like rot and old fear. Elara didn't know how long she'd been there. Time moved differently when your mind was full of fog, when every morning started with a needle in your arm and a voice telling you to stay quiet, stay still, stay alive. The walls were rough timber, gaps stuffed with moss that did nothing against the wind. There was one window, too high to reach, and a door that locked from the outside. Her handler's name was Greaves. He was a thick man with hands like slabs of meat and eyes that never quite looked at her face. He brought food twice a day, watery soup, hard bread, sometimes a piece of dried meat that tasted like leather. He brought the needle every morning, and once a month, when the moon swelled fat and silver in the sky, he brought chains. She didn't understand the chains at first. "It's for your own good," Greaves would say, his voice flat as stone. "You get sick on full moons, violent. This keeps you safe." But Elara didn't feel sick. She felt alive. When the moon rose, something inside her woke up, something huge and hungry and howling. Her bones ached like they wanted to break and reform. Her skin burned. Her teeth felt too sharp for her mouth. And somewhere deep in the drugged-out haze of her mind, she could hear herself screaming to get out. Then morning would come. The needle would come. And she'd forget. Except she didn't. Not completely. Memories weren't supposed to stick when you were on the kind of cocktail Greaves was feeding her, but Elara's mind was stubborn. Little things slipped through the cracks. A flash of a woman's face, older, elegant, terrified. The smell of burning wood. A man's voice shouting her name. Except it wasn't Elara. It was something else. Something that felt true, but vanished the moment she tried to hold it. And lately the flashes were getting stronger. It was autumn now, she thought. The air had teeth. Greaves had started wearing a heavier coat, and the night stretched longer. He'd been tense for weeks, muttering to himself, checking the door locks twice, 3 times. Something had changed. Something had him spooked. Tonight, she found out why. She wasn't supposed to be awake. Greaves had given her the evening dose an hour ago, and usually that put her under until dawn. But her body had been fighting the drugs harder lately, burning through them faster. So when she heard the voices outside, she kept her breathing slow and steady, her eyes closed, listening. "Don't care what it takes." The first voice was unfamiliar, clipped, authoritative, expensive. A woman. "The Queen wants this finished. No loose end. I've kept her contained for 5 years." That was Greaves, defensive. "She doesn't remember anything. She's no threat." "She's alive. That's threat enough." Papers rustled. "You'll receive the final payment once it's confirmed. Make it look natural. An accident, sickness. I don't care. Just make sure no one ever finds out she existed." Silence. Then Greaves. "When?" "Before the next moon. The Queen is tired of waiting." Footsteps crunched through frozen leaves, fading into the distance. A horse snorted. Hoofbeats drummed away into the night. The door creaked open. Greaves came back inside, and Elara heard him sit heavily in the chair by the stove. He was breathing hard. Angry or scared, she couldn't tell. Maybe both. She waited. An hour passed. 2. When his breathing finally settled into the deep rhythm of sleep, Elara opened her eyes. Her hands were shaking. Not from the drugs. From something else. Something that felt like rage. The Queen wants this finished. What Queen? Why? Who was she supposed to be that someone royal wanted her erased? The questions didn't matter. Not right now. Right now, only one thing mattered. If she stayed, she was dead. Elara sat up slowly. The cabin was dark except for the dying glow of the stove. Greaves was slumped in his chair, head tilted back, mouth open. On the table beside him, his belt, his knife, and a set of keys. She'd never tried to escape before. There had never been a point. Where would she go? She had no memory, no family, no coin. The world outside might as well be another planet. But now she had a deadline. Before the next moon. That gave her maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks to figure out who she was. 2 weeks to find out why a queen wanted her dead. 2 weeks to survive. She moved like smoke. The floorboards didn't creak. She'd learned which ones were safe over the years. 3 steps to the table. She reached for the keys, fingers closing around cold metal. Greaves snorted in his sleep, shifted. Elara froze. He settled. She breathed. The knife was next. It was old, the handle worn smooth, but the blade was sharp. Greaves kept it that way. She tucked it into the waistband of her ragged skirt and turned toward the door. It opened without a sound. The night air hit her like a fist, cold, clean, free. Elara stood in the doorway, staring out at a world she barely remembered. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by dense forest, pines so tall they blotted out the stars. A narrow trail led away to the east. Greaves' horse was tied to a post 20 feet away, a sturdy bay mare with a white star on her forehead. Elara had never ridden a horse in her life, at least not that she could remember. But she'd seen Greaves do it 100 times. How hard could it be? She approached the mare slowly, hands open, whispering nonsense words that felt soothing. The horse eyed her warily, but didn't spook. Elara untied the lead, walked the mare to the side of the post, and used it to climb onto her back. The world tilted. She grabbed a fistful of mane and clung on. The horse snorted. "Please don't throw me off," Elara whispered. "I have no idea what I'm doing." She nudged the mare's sides like she'd seen Greaves do. The horse started walking, slow, bless her, toward the trail. Elara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Any second, Greaves would wake up. He'd see the open door. He'd come after her. But the cabin stayed dark. The night stayed quiet. And Elara rode into the forest, into the unknown, with nothing but a stolen knife and a head full of broken memories. Ot. The first night she rode until her legs went numb. The mare, Elara decided to call her Star, was patient with her fumbling. They followed the trail east because it was the only direction that made sense. West led back toward whatever settlement Greaves came from. North and south were uncharted wilderness. East felt like a way, and a way was all Elara needed. When dawn broke, she slid off Star's back and nearly collapsed. Her thighs screamed. Her spine felt like it had been replaced with broken glass. She tied the mare to a tree and sat with her back against the trunk, trying to stop shaking. She'd done it. She'd actually escaped. Now what? The forest around her was waking up, birds calling, squirrels chittering, wind moving through the branches. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest hurt. How long had it been since she'd seen a sunrise? Years. 5 years, if that woman's voice was telling the truth. 5 years of her life. Stolen. Elara closed her eyes and tried to pull up a memory. Any memory that felt solid. There was the woman's face again. Older, sharp cheekbones, dark hair shot through with silver. Her eyes were the same color as Elara's, a strange pale green that looked almost gold in certain light. Mother? The word felt right, but there was nothing attached to it. No context, no story. Then another flash. A grand hall, stone walls hung with banners. A man standing at the center, tall and broad-shouldered, laughing at something she'd said. Warmth spread through her chest. She'd loved him. She was sure of it. Father? But the memory fractured before she could see his face clearly, dissolving into smoke. Damn it! Elara opened her eyes, frustrated. The drugs had done their job too well. Whatever she'd been, whoever she'd been, it was buried deep, but not gone. She could feel it stirring, clawing its way toward the surface, especially when the moon started to rise. She looked up through the canopy. Daylight, still, safe. But tonight the moon would be a little fuller than last night, and the night after that, fuller still. She had maybe 10 days before the next full moon, 10 days before whatever was inside her tried to break free again. Elara pushed herself to her feet, wincing. She needed food, water, a plan. The forest was full of game. She could hear them moving through the underbrush, but she had no bow, no traps, no idea how to hunt. The knife would have to do. She spent the morning foraging. Mushrooms she thought she recognized, berries that didn't look poisonous. A a stream where she drank until her stomach sloshed. It wasn't much, but it was something. By midday, she heard the hoofbeats. Elara's head snapped up, distant, but coming closer. Multiple horses, moving fast, Greaves. He'd brought help. She ran. Star was rested and willing, thank the universe. Elara threw herself onto the mare's back and kicked hard. They bolted through the trees, crashing through underbrush, scattering birds. Behind them, the hoofbeats grew louder. Voices shouted, men's voices, rough and eager. There! I see her! Don't lose her! The bounties triple if we bring her back alive. Bounty. So it wasn't just Greaves. Someone had put coin on her head. Elara leaned low over Star's neck, urging her faster. Branches whipped past, tearing at her clothes, her skin. The forest blurred, her pulse roared in her ears. She had no idea where she was going, just away, always away. The trees thinned. Ahead, the ground dropped sharply into a ravine. A river churned at the bottom, silver and violent. No time to stop, no time to think. Elara aimed Star at the narrowest part of the ravine and kicked. The mare leaped. For one breathless moment, they were flying. Wind roared. The world spun. Then Star's hooves hit the far side, scrabbled for purchase. Hold, please hold, and found it. They scrambled up the opposite bank and kept running. Behind them, the men skidded to a stop at the edge of the ravine. One of them cursed. Another shouted something about going around. But Elara was already gone, vanishing into the deep forest on the other side, where the trees grew so thick even daylight struggled to break through. She rode for 3 more days. The forest changed as she moved east, pines giving way to hardwoods, then to a strange mix of both. The air grew colder. The night stretched longer. She saw no towns, no roads, no signs of civilization, just wilderness, vast and indifferent. On the 4th night, the moon rose full. Elara felt it before she saw it. A pull low in her gut, insistent and undeniable. Her skin prickled. Her teeth ached. She dismounted from Star and stumbled to a clearing, doubling over as the first wave of pain hit. It felt like her bones were trying to crawl out of her skin. No, she gasped. Not now. Please, not now. But her body didn't care. It never had. The transformation clawed at her from the inside, demanding release. She could feel it surging, something massive, something powerful, something that had been caged for too long. She pressed her hands to the ground, trying to breathe through it. Her vision blurred. When it cleared, the world looked different, sharper. Colors more vivid, sounds louder. She could hear Star's heartbeat 30 feet away, smell the sap in the trees, taste the wind. And she could feel hunger, not for food, for freedom, for truth. Elara threw her head back and screamed, but the sound that came out wasn't human. It was a howl, primal and raw, echoing through the forest like a challenge. Somewhere in the distance, something howled back. Then another, and another. The pack had heard her, and they were coming. She woke at dawn, naked and shivering in the clearing. Her clothes were shredded, scattered across the ground in strips. Her hands were covered in scratches. Her own, from clawing at herself during the transformation. But she was whole. She was alive. And she remembered. Not everything, but pieces. Fragments of the night before, seen through eyes that weren't quite human. She'd run through the forest on 4 legs instead of 2, powerful and fast and free. She'd felt the pack nearby, others like her drawn by her call. They'd circled her, wary but curious, and for a moment she'd felt belonging. Then dawn had come, and the transformation reversed, and she'd been alone again. Elara sat up slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. Her body ached, but it was different from the usual pain. This felt like use, like she'd finally let something out that had been trapped too long. What am I? The question burned. Not human, at least not entirely. Something else. Something wild. And whatever it was, someone had tried very hard to keep it buried. She gathered the remains of her clothes and did her best to cover herself. Star was still there, grazing peacefully, unbothered by whatever her rider had become in the night. Elara found the saddlebags Greaves had left on the mare and pulled out his spare shirt. It was huge on her, but it worked. She also found a small leather pouch tucked into the bottom of the bag. Inside, coin. Not much, but enough to buy food. Maybe a room. Greaves, you bastard! Thank you. She needed a town. Somewhere she could rest, regroup, figure out her next move. and maybe, just maybe, find someone who could tell her what the hell she was. Elara climbed onto Star's back and pointed her east, toward answers, toward whatever came next. The town appeared 2 days later, rising out of the forest like a mirage. It wasn't much. Maybe 24 buildings clustered around a central square, wood and stone construction, smoke rising from chimneys. But after a week in the wilderness, it looked like paradise. Elara rode in slowly, hyper-aware of how she must look. Wild-haired, half-dressed in a man's shirt, face scratched and dirty. People stopped to stare. A woman pulled her child closer. A man spat into the dirt. She ignored them and made for the building with a sign that read, "The Broken Antler Inn." The inside was warm and dim, smelling of roasting meat and old beer. A handful of patrons sat at scattered tables, talking in low voices. Behind the bar stood a woman in her 50s, solid and sharp-eyed, wiping down mugs. "Help you?" the woman asked, her tone making it clear she wasn't sure she wanted to. Elara pulled out Greaves's coin pouch. "Room, food, and information, if you have it." The woman's eyes flicked to the pouch, calculating. "Coin first." Elara slid 3 silver pieces across the bar. The woman made them disappear. "Room's upstairs, second door, food's coming. Information depends on what you're asking." "I need to know where I am." The woman snorted. "You're in Grey Hollow, edge of the Thornwood. If you didn't know that, you're more lost than you look." "Grey Hollow," Elara repeated. The name meant nothing. "What's the nearest city?" "Nearest anything civilized is Iron Peak, 3 days north. But you don't want to go there." "Why not?" The woman leaned in, voice dropping. "Because the Alpha King's court is in Iron Peak, and right now, anyone who looks like they're running from something gets noticed. King's been tense lately. Lots of strangers disappearing." Alpha King. The title sent a shiver down Elara's spine, though she didn't know why. "What's he like?" she asked. "This king." The woman straightened, eyes guarded. "Dangerous, powerful. Been cursed since before I was born, blind as a stone. But don't let that fool you. Cale Draven doesn't need eyes to know when you're lying." She paused. "Why do you want to know?" Elara hesitated, then, "Because I think someone from his court wants me dead." The bar went silent. Every head turned toward her. The woman's expression hardened. "Then you should leave," she said quietly. "Right now. Before someone here decides that coin isn't worth the risk of helping you." Elara looked around the room. The patrons were watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. One man had his hand on his belt, fingers tapping near a knife. "Understood." Elara took the key the woman slid toward her. "I'll be gone by morning." She climbed the stairs to her room, locked the door, and sat on the narrow bed, trying to think. Someone from the king's court wanted her dead. "A queen," the woman outside the cabin had said. Did that mean the Alpha King had a queen? A wife? Or was it someone else? A dowager? A rival? Too many questions. Not enough answers. Elara lay back on the bed, exhaustion crashing over her. She'd rest tonight, eat, recover her strength, and then a knock at the door. She bolted upright, knife in hand. "It's just food, girl," the innkeeper's voice called. "Don't stab me!" Elara opened the door a crack. The woman stood there with a tray. Bread, cheese, roasted chicken, and a mug of something that smelled like cider. "Thought you could use a proper meal," the woman said, her expression softer now. "You've got the look of someone who's been through hell." "Thank you." Elara took the tray. The woman hesitated. "Listen, I don't know what you're running from, and I don't want to. But if you're smart, you'll keep moving. There are people in Iron Peak who make problems disappear. If they're after you..." She shook her head. "Just be careful." "I will." The woman left. Elara locked the door again and ate like she was starving. Because she was. The food was simple but good, and by the time she finished, some of her strength had returned. She lay down, intending to sleep for a few hours. Instead, she dreamed. Not the fractured flashes she was used to. A real dream. Vivid. Whole. She was standing in that grand hall again, the one with the banners. But this time she could see everything clearly. The walls were hung with green and gold. The the symbols of a house she didn't recognize. At the center of the room stood the man from before. Her father, she was certain now. He was tall, graying at the temples, with eyes like hers. "You're stronger than you know," he was saying, his hand on her shoulder. "When the time comes, don't be afraid of what you are. Embrace it." "But what if I can't control it?" Her own voice, younger, uncertain. "Then you'll learn. That's what makes us who we are, Elara. Not our power, but what we choose to do with it." The scene shifted. Now she was in a bedroom, smaller, darker. Someone was shaking her awake. The woman with silver in her hair, her mother. "We have to go, now. They're coming." "Who?" "No time. Take this." She pressed something into Elara's hand, a pendant, silver, shaped like a crescent moon with a star in the center. "Never take it off. It's the only proof of who you are." Shouting erupted outside. Footsteps thundered through the halls. Her mother pulled her toward a hidden door in the wall. The dream shattered. Elara woke gasping, hand clutching at her bare throat. The pendant. She'd had a pendant. She tore through Greaves's saddlebags, searching, praying, and there, at the very bottom, wrapped in a scrap of cloth, she found it. The silver crescent moon with the star at its center, proof of who she was. Elara held it up to the moonlight streaming through the window, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt something close to hope. She wasn't just a ghost. She wasn't just a mistake. She was someone. Someone worth hiding. Someone worth killing. And she was going to find out why. Dawn came too fast. Elara woke with the pendant clutched in her fist, the metal edges digging into her palm hard enough to leave marks. She'd barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards outside her door sent her bolt upright, knife ready. But no one came. The inn stayed quiet except for the usual sounds of a building settling into morning. She dressed quickly in the cleanest clothes she could salvage from the saddlebags, tucked the pendant under her shirt where it sat cold against her breastbone, and slipped downstairs before the common room filled with breakfast customers. The innkeeper was already up, sweeping the floor with sharp, efficient strokes. She looked up when Elara appeared, eyes narrowing slightly. "Leaving already?" "Thought that's what you wanted." "It is." The woman stopped sweeping, leaned on the broom handle. "But I'll give you some advice anyway. The road north to Iron Peak is watched. King's men patrol it regular, looking for deserters and troublemakers. You go that way, they'll stop you." "Then I won't go north." "East is wilderness for 300 miles. South is the wastes. You'll die of thirst before you find water. West?" The woman shook her head. "West is where you came from, isn't it?" Elara said nothing. The innkeeper sighed. "There's an old hunter's track that runs northeast, cuts through the mountains. Rough going, but it'll get you to the far side of Iron Peak without going through the checkpoints. If you're determined to be stupid about this, why are you helping me?" The woman's expression flickered. Something sad passed across her face. "Because I had a daughter once. She ran from something too. Never made it." She turned back to her sweeping. "The track starts a mile east of town, marked by a lightning-struck oak. Follow the deer trails. Don't stop moving." Elara wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded and left, stepping out into the cold morning air. Star was waiting in the stable, already saddled. The stable boy must have been up early. Elara gave him a copper piece and swung onto the mare's back, every muscle protesting. She was still sore from the transformation 3 nights ago, her body not quite recovered. The town was waking up around her. Smoke rose from chimneys. A rooster crowed. Somewhere a baby cried. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. The kind of life she'd never have as long as someone wanted her dead. She found the lightning-struck oak exactly where the innkeeper said it would be. A massive trunk split down the middle, blackened and hollow, but somehow still alive. The hunter's track beyond it was barely visible, more suggestion than path, winding up into the foothills. Elara urged Star forward and didn't look back. The mountains swallowed them whole. For 2 days she climbed, following deer trails that switched back and forth across increasingly steep terrain. The air grew thin. Her lungs burned. Star struggled with the elevation, breathing hard, but the mare pushed on without complaint. At night they sheltered in caves or beneath overhangs, and Elara rationed the dried meat and hard biscuits she'd bought in Grey Hollow. On the 3rd day the weather turned. Storm clouds rolled in from the west, dark and heavy, bringing wind that cut like knives. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. Elara pulled her stolen coat tighter and kept riding, but the trail was getting harder to follow, obscured by loose rock and scree. Then the snow started. Not a gentle dusting, a full blizzard, howling out of nowhere. Visibility dropped to nothing. Star whinnied in distress, ears pinned back. Elara dismounted and led the mare by the reins, searching desperately for shelter. The cold was brutal. It sank through her coat, through her skin, into her bones. Her fingers went numb. Her lips cracked and bled. She stumbled over rocks she couldn't see, caught herself, stumbled again. This was how she'd die. Not murdered by some faceless queen, not torn apart by hunters, frozen on a mountain nobody cared about. The bitter irony almost made her laugh. Then Star stopped dead, refusing to move. Elara tugged the reins, but the mare planted her feet and snorted, shaking her head violently. "Come on," Elara begged through chattering teeth. "Please, we have to keep moving." Star backed up instead, nearly pulling the reins from Elara's frozen grip. Elara took a step forward to see what was spooking the mare, and the ground disappeared beneath her feet. She fell. Not far, maybe 10 feet, landing hard on a slope of loose shale that immediately gave way, sending her sliding down in a cascade of rock and ice. She scrabbled for purchase, fingers tearing, and finally slammed into something solid that knocked the wind out of her. A tree. She'd hit a tree growing at an angle from the mountainside. Above her, Star's panicked whinnying faded into the storm. Elara lay there, stunned and gasping, trying to inventory the damage. Bruised ribs, definitely, possibly cracked. Her left shoulder screamed when she tried to move it, but nothing felt broken. She dropped the knife somewhere in the fall. "Perfect." Her voice came out as a croak. "Just perfect." She forced herself to sit up, wincing. The slope below her disappeared into white nothing. Above, the same. She had no idea which way was up anymore, no idea where the trail was. The cold was seeping in deeper now, that dangerous kind of cold that made you want to lie down and sleep. She couldn't stay here. Had to move, had to... A sound cut through the storm. Not wind, not falling rock. Footsteps. Someone was walking toward her through the blizzard, moving with the kind of confidence that said they knew exactly where they were going. Elara's hand went to her belt for the knife that wasn't there anymore. A figure emerged from the white, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark cloak that seemed to drink in what little light there was. Male, moving like a predator. He stopped 10 feet away. "You're not supposed to be here." His voice was deep, rough-edged, with an accent she couldn't place. "This is private land." Elara tried to stand and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her ribs. She stayed on her knees, hands pressed to the frozen ground, trying to catch her breath. "I'm lost," she managed. "The storm! I fell!" "I know. I heard you." He tilted his head slightly, and something about the gesture made her skin prickle. "You're injured." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." He took a step closer. "And you're freezing to death." Now that he was nearer, she could see his face beneath the hood. Strong features, sharp jaw, a scar running from his left temple to his cheekbone. His eyes were strange. Not the color. They were pale gray, almost silver. But the way he looked at her. No, not at her. Through her. Past her. Like he wasn't seeing her at all. "You're blind," she said before she could stop herself. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Yes. Then how did you know I was here?" "I heard you fall. Heard your horse panicking. Heard you breathing too fast and muttering to yourself about dying on a mountain." He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. "I don't need eyes to know when someone's in trouble." Elara's pulse kicked up. There was something wrong about him. Not dangerous necessarily, but other. The same way she felt other when the moon was full. Like he was human-shaped, but not quite human. "Who are you?" "Someone who's deciding whether to help you or leave you here." He reached out, and she flinched. His hand stopped inches from her face. "I'm not going to hurt you. I need to know how badly you're injured." She didn't move, didn't speak. His fingers found her shoulder, the one that had hit the tree, and pressed gently. She hissed in pain. "Dislocated," he said. "I can fix it, but it's going to hurt." "Don't!" He moved fast, One hand braced against her back, the other gripping her arm. A sharp twist, a pop that sent lightning through her entire body, and suddenly the joint was back in place. Elara bit down on a scream, tasting blood. Told you it would hurt. You could have warned me first, she gasped. You would have tensed up, made it worse. He stood, offered his hand. Can you walk? She stared at his hand. It was scarred across the knuckles, rough from work or fighting or both. After a moment, she took it, let him pull her to her feet. The moment their skin touched, something jolted through her, a shock like static electricity, but deeper, stronger. He felt it too. His grip tightened fractionally, his expression going very still. What was that? Elara whispered. He didn't answer, just released her hand and turned away. Follow me. There's a shelter nearby. You'll die if you stay out here. My horse is already there. She had more sense than you did. He started walking, navigating the slope with impossible certainty. Keep up. I'm not coming back for you. Elara followed because she had no other choice. He moved through the storm like it wasn't even there, never stumbling, never hesitating. She struggled to keep pace, her ribs protesting with every step. Twice she slipped on ice, and he paused without looking back, waiting until she found her footing again. The shelter turned out to be a cave set into the mountainside, the entrance hidden by an overhang. Inside, it opened into a surprisingly large space, dry and warmer than the outside. Star was there, tied to a rock formation, looking annoyed but unharmed. A fire burned in a stone-ringed pit at the center. Beside it sat a pack, bedroll, and supplies that suggested someone had been camping here for a while. You live here? Elara asked. For now. He moved to the fire, added wood from a neat stack against the wall. Sit. Warm up. You're shaking. She was. She hadn't noticed. Elara sank down near the fire and held her hands out to the flames, trying to stop the tremors running through her. Her wet clothes steamed. The man settled across from her, close enough to the fire that she could see him clearly now. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 30, maybe less. The scar on his face was old, long-healed. His hair was dark, pulled back from his face. And those eyes, even unfocused, they were unsettling. Thank you, she said quietly, for helping me. Don't thank me yet. I still haven't decided if you're worth the trouble. Worth the... What's that supposed to mean? It means you're running from something. He leaned back against the cave wall, arms crossed. You have that look, desperate, cornered, and you came up through the mountains instead of taking the road, which means you're either stupid or hiding. Maybe I just like mountains. You fell off one. Try again. Elara's jaw tightened. Who I am and what I'm doing is none of your business. It is when you're trespassing on my land. You said this was private land. You didn't say it was yours. I'm saying it now. His head tilted in that strange way again, like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. You're from the South. Your accent's Thornwood, but not local. Educated. You've been on the road for at least a week based on how you smell. And you're terrified, though you're trying very hard not to show it. Elara stared at him. How do you... I pay attention. He shifted, and firelight caught the scar on his face. Now, are you going to tell me why someone like you is running through a blizzard with no supplies and a stolen horse? Star isn't stolen. She's... Elara stopped. How did you know she's stolen? The saddlebags have a brand, Thornwood Rangers. You're not a ranger. Damn, she'd missed that. Elara looked down at her hands, trying to figure out how much to tell him. The truth felt dangerous, but lies felt worse. I'm trying to get to Iron Peak, she said finally. Why? That's my business. Wrong answer. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Let me tell you what I think. I think you're running from someone powerful, someone connected, and I think you have no idea what you're walking into. I can handle myself. You fell off a mountain. I survived, didn't I? Barely. His expression was unreadable. Iron Peak is dangerous right now. The king's court is unstable. There are factions vying for power, and anyone who looks vulnerable gets caught in the crossfire. If you go there, you'll be dead within a week. I'll take my chances. Will you? It wasn't a question. He stood, moved to his pack, and pulled out a water skin. Tossed it to her. Drink, then sleep. Storm won't clear until morning. Elara caught the water skin but didn't open it. Who are you? Someone who's keeping to himself. I'd suggest you do the same. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He moved to the back of the cave, settled against the wall, and closed his eyes. There are blankets in the pack. Use them if you're cold. Don't try to leave before the storm clears. You'll die. And don't steal anything while I'm asleep. I'll know. How? I always know. He fell silent after that, his breathing evening out into what might have been sleep. Elara watched him for a long moment, trying to decide if she should be afraid. She probably should be. Strange man, isolated cave, middle of nowhere. Every instinct screamed danger, but he'd helped her, fixed her shoulder, brought her out of the storm. And there was that jolt when they'd touched, like something recognizing something. Elara drank from the water skin, found the blankets, and wrapped herself up near the fire. Her body ached everywhere. Her mind spun with questions. Who was he? Why was he up here alone? And why did being near him make her skin buzz with awareness? She didn't have answers, and she was too exhausted to search for them. Sleep took her fast, dragging her down into darkness. She dreamed of fire and blood, of running through halls while people screamed, of her mother's face pale with terror. They're coming for us. For you. They know what you are. Then the dream shifted. She was in a throne room, massive and cold. A woman sat on a raised dais, beautiful and cruel, wearing a crown of silver thorns. She was smiling. Find her, the woman said. Find the abomination and bring me her heart. Elara woke with a gasp. The fire had burned down to coals. Outside, the storm still raged. Across the cave, the man hadn't moved. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the pendant beneath her shirt. The metal was warm, almost hot. Something was happening, something bigger than her, bigger than a forgotten past. And she was running straight into the center of it, but she couldn't stop now. She had to know the truth. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world buried in fresh snow. Elara woke to find the man already up, packing his supplies with efficient movements. He'd banked the fire, but left it burning, and there was food laid out on a flat rock. Hard cheese, dried meat, bread. Eat, he said, without looking at her. You'll need your strength for the descent. Elara sat up, wincing. Her ribs still hurt, but the shoulder was functional. You're leaving. So are you. Trail's clear enough now. You can make Iron Peak by nightfall if you push. I thought you said it was dangerous. It is. I also know you're not going to listen to me. He tied off his pack and slung it over his shoulder. So I'll give you this instead. When you get to the city, stay away from the palace. Don't ask questions about the royal family. Don't tell anyone your real name. How do you know I haven't been using my real name? Because you hesitated before answering every personal question I asked. You're hiding something. He moved toward this cave entrance, paused. One more thing. The king is blind, but he sees more than most people with perfect vision. If you meet him, don't lie. He'll know. Why are you telling me this? He was quiet for a moment, then, because you're going to need it. He walked out into the snow without another word. Elara scrambled to her feet, grabbed a piece of bread, and followed him outside. He was already 20 feet away, moving down the slope with that same impossible confidence. Wait, she called. I don't even know your name. He stopped, turned halfway, his scarred face catching the morning light. It's better that way. Then he was gone, disappearing into the tree line. Elara stood there, bread clutched in her hand, feeling like she'd just had a conversation with a ghost. Or a warning. She ate quickly, loaded her few belongings onto Star, and started down the mountain. The man was right. The trail was clear. By midday, she'd reached the foothills. By late afternoon, the forest thinned, and she caught her first glimpse of Iron Peak in the distance. It was bigger than she'd expected. Much bigger. The city sprawled across a valley, stone walls 20 feet high surrounding it, guard towers at regular intervals. At the center rose a massive fortress, all dark stone and sharp angles, banners snapping from its highest towers. Green and gold, the same colors from her dream. Her father's colors. Elara's throat tightened. She'd been here before. She knew it with bone-deep certainty. This had been her home, and someone had driven her from it. She urged Star forward, joining the flow of traffic on the road leading to the city gates. Merchants with wagons, farmers with carts, travelers on foot, all headed toward Iron Peak as the sun sank lower. No one paid her any attention. She was just another dusty rider in a crowd of them. The gates were manned by guards in dark uniforms, checking wagons but waving most people through. Elara kept her head down and rode past without incident. Inside, the city was overwhelming. Buildings packed tight, streets narrow and winding, noise everywhere, vendors shouting, children laughing, horses clopping on cobblestones. The smell was intense: smoke, cooking meat, unwashed bodies, horse manure. Humanity pressed in from all sides. Elara had never felt more alone. She found a stable near the market district and paid to board Star, then wandered the streets trying to get her bearings. The fortress loomed over everything, impossible to ignore. She needed information, needed to understand what had happened here 5 years ago. But the man's warning echoed in her head. Stay away from the palace. Don't ask questions. She found a tavern called the Broken Crown, busy but not packed. Inside, she ordered ale she didn't want and sat in a corner, listening to conversations around her. Most of it was mundane: crop prices, weather, gossip about neighbors. But then 2 men at the next table started talking in lower voices, and Elara's attention sharpened. "Hearing the wedding's off," one of them said. "Bullshit. The king's been betrothed to Lady Corinth for months." "I'm telling you, something happened. My cousin works in the kitchens. Says the lady left the palace 2 days ago in a fury. King refused to set a date." "Why would he do that? Match like that secures the southern provinces." "Who knows? Man's been strange lately, stranger than usual. They say he's been having dreams." "Dreams?" The second man snorted. "He's cursed blind. What's he dreaming about?" "That's what I'm saying. Something's wrong." They moved on to other topics. Elara sat very still, processing. The king was supposed to marry someone, a political match, but he'd called it off. Why? She needed to get closer to the palace, needed to find someone who could tell her about the royal family, about what happened 5 years ago. But she couldn't just walk up and ask. That would get her noticed, possibly arrested. Unless an idea formed, dangerous and probably stupid. The palace would have servants, lots of them, kitchens, stables, cleaning staff. People who heard things, saw things. People who needed work and didn't ask too many questions about where workers came from. Elara could get inside. Not as a noble, not as someone important, but as someone invisible. She finished her ale and left the tavern, heading toward the fortress as twilight settled over the city. The closer she got, the more her pulse raced. This was insane. If anyone recognized her, if that queen was still here, she'd be dead before she could blink, but she had to try. The servants' entrance was around the back, less guarded. A few people were coming and going, carrying supplies. Elara watched for a pattern, waited until a wagon arrived with barrels of wine, and slipped in with the workers unloading them. No one stopped her. No one even looked. Inside the fortress was a maze, corridors branching in every direction, stairs going up and down, voices echoing off stone walls. Elara followed a group of servants deeper into the complex, staying close but not too close, trying to look like she belonged. They entered a massive kitchen, hot and chaotic. Dozens of people worked at stations, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, kneading dough. A woman in an apron stood at the center, barking orders. "Need those platters ready in 10 minutes. The council's already seated." Elara grabbed an empty basket from a shelf and started filling it with bread from a cooling rack, mimicking the movements of the people around her. Her heart hammered. Any second someone would notice she didn't belong, would ask who she was. "You, new girl." Elara froze. The woman in the apron was looking right at her. "Yes?" Elara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Take that upstairs. Main dining hall, 2nd floor, and hurry. Lord Regent hates waiting." "Lord Regent." Elara nodded and left before the woman could look too closely. She climbed the stairs, basket in hand, following the sound of voices. The dining hall was enormous, lit by chandeliers, a long table down the center. Men and women in expensive clothes sat around it, talking in tight, tense voices. At the head of the table sat a man with silver hair and cold eyes. The Lord Regent, probably. Elara set the basket down on a sideboard, trying to be invisible, but as she turned to leave, one of the council members spoke. "Still say the king's refusal to marry is unacceptable. We need the alliance. The king, another voice drawled, does what he wants. He always has. He's blind and cursed. He shouldn't be making decisions that affect the realm. Careful. This voice was softer, but it carried weight. Questioning his rule is treason. I'm not questioning his rule. I'm questioning his judgment. The Lord Regent held up a hand. Enough. The king has his reasons. We'll revisit the marriage question next month. And if he refuses again? Silence. Then the regent smiled. Then we'll remind him that some choices aren't his to make. A chill ran down Elara's spine. She backed toward the door, moving carefully, and ran straight into someone. Hard chest, solid presence. Hands caught her arms before she could fall. Easy, a deep voice said. Elara looked up, and her breath stopped. It was him, the man from the cave. But he wasn't dressed in rough travel clothes anymore. He wore black, severe, and formal, with a silver chain across his chest, and the way the council members were staring at him with fear and respect. Your Majesty, the Lord Regent said, standing. We didn't expect you. Majesty. The man from the cave was the king. Elara's mind went blank. He was still holding her arms, his blind eyes fixed somewhere past her shoulder, but there was recognition in the set of his jaw, the way his grip tightened just slightly. He knew it was her. Apologies, he said, his tone flat. I didn't see you there. It should have been funny, a blind man making that joke, but no one laughed. Kael Draven released her and stepped past, moving toward the table with that same impossible confidence. Continue your discussion. I'm just here to observe. Of course, Your Majesty. Elara fled. She didn't wait, didn't think, just turned and ran, her pulse roaring in her ears. The king. She'd spent the night in a cave with the king, the man who was supposed to be dangerous, cursed, unstable, the man whose court wanted him controlled. And he'd known. From the moment she'd touched him, he'd known something was different about her. She made it back to the kitchen, abandoned the basket, and kept moving. Out through the servants' entrance into the courtyard, toward the gates. A hand caught her wrist. Elara spun, knife appearing in her hand from somewhere. When had she picked up a knife? Kael Draven stood there, alone, his expression unreadable. Let go, she said. Not until you tell me who you are. I'm no one. You're lying. He pulled her into an alcove out of sight from the guards. His voice dropped. I felt what happened when we touched. So did you. That doesn't happen with no one. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. His hand was still around her wrist, his thumb pressed against her pulse. Your heart's racing. You're scared, but not of me. You don't know anything about me. I know you're running from someone powerful. I know you came to Iron Peak looking for answers, and I know that whatever you are, it's connected to me somehow. His grip tightened. So I'll ask you one more time. Who are you? Elara stared at him. At this blind king who saw too much, who'd appeared out of nowhere in a blizzard, who'd helped her for no reason she could understand. And she made a choice. Dangerous, possibly fatal. But she was so tired of running. My name, she said quietly, is Elara Voss. And 5 years ago, someone erased me from existence. I need to know why. His face went very still. Voss. Does that name mean something to you? He didn't answer, just released her wrist and took a step back, his expression shutting down completely. Go, he said. Leave the city, tonight. What? Why? Because if you stay, they'll kill you. His voice was harsh now, urgent. I can't protect you from what's coming. No one can. Who's they? The council? The Lord Regent? Everyone. He turned away. Go, now, while you still can. He walked away, disappearing into the fortress. Elara stood there, shaking. She'd gotten her answer, or part of it. Her name meant something, something important enough to scare a king. And she wasn't leaving until she found out what. She didn't leave. Elara knew it was stupid. The king himself had told her to run. But she'd spent 5 years running, 5 years being nobody, and she was done. If her name meant something, if it scared people, then she needed to know why, even if it killed her. She found a room in a boarding house on the east side of the city, paid a week in advance with the last of Greaves's coin, and spent the next 2 days watching the fortress from a distance. learning patterns, guard rotations, which entrances were busy, which were quiet. The servants came and went at dawn and dusk. Merchants delivered supplies mid-morning. The main gates opened for nobles and officials throughout the day, but there were always guards checking credentials. She needed another way in. On the third morning, she followed a laundry cart leaving the fortress and tracked it to a building near the river, a wash house where palace linens were cleaned. The women working there were rough-voiced and efficient, arms deep in suds, gossiping while they scrubbed. Elara waited until the midday break, then approached the eldest woman who sat outside smoking a pipe. "Need work," Elara said. "Heard you're always short-handed." The woman looked her over with sharp eyes. "You done laundry before?" "Enough." "Hands." Elara held them out. The woman examined her palms, then nodded. "You'll do. Pays shit. Hours are worse. You start tomorrow dawn. Late once and you're out." Simple as that. The next morning, Elara joined the other washerwomen, hauling baskets of soiled linens from the fortress. No one questioned her. No one cared. She was just another pair of hands. But while she worked, she listened. The women talked constantly about their families, their aches, their frustrations, and about the palace. They had opinions on everything: which nobles were kind, which were cruel, which guards could be bribed, which servants were sleeping with whom. "Heard the queen's back," one woman said, wringing out a sheet. "Thought she'd be gone longer." Elara's hands stilled in the water. "Queen?" "Dowager Queen Saris, King's stepmother. She's been at her estate down south since the failed betrothal. Apparently she's furious." "Why'd the betrothal fail?" another woman asked. "King refused to set a date, just kept putting it off until Lady Corinth gave up and left." The first woman lowered her voice. "My cousin says he's been having visions, seeing things that aren't there. The curse is getting worse." "He's been cursed for years. Why now?" "Who knows? But the council's worried. If the king can't rule, the regent takes over. And if that happens—" She made a cutting gesture across her throat. Elara forced herself to keep scrubbing, even as her mind raced. The Dowager Queen. Saris. Was she the one who'd ordered Elara erased? "What's the Dowager Queen like?" Elara asked casually. The women exchanged glances. "Careful," one of them said. "Beautiful, smart, ruthless. She married the old king when she was 20, barely older than his son. When the old king died, some people thought she'd try to rule through Kael. But the king wouldn't let her. King doesn't let anyone control him. Even blind, he's dangerous." The woman paused. "There's stories, you know, about what happened the night he was cursed. Some say it was an assassination attempt that went wrong. Others say it was punishment for something he did. What do you think?" The woman shrugged. "I think powerful people don't get cursed for no reason." That afternoon, Elara volunteered to return the clean linens to the fortress herself. The other women were happy to let her. It meant extra walking and heavy baskets. She loaded a cart and pushed it through the servants' entrance, nodding to the guard who barely looked at her. Inside, she moved through the corridors with purpose, memorizing the layout. The kitchens were on the ground floor, east wing. The council chambers were second floor north. The royal apartments were third floor west. She had no idea which room was the king's. As she delivered linens to a storage room near the kitchens, she heard voices, angry voices, two men arguing just around the corner. "Can't keep avoiding this. The council wants answers." "The council can wait." That voice was familiar, the Lord Regent. "They're talking about calling a vote. If you don't have majority support—" "I'll have it, trust me. Once the king's marriage is back on track, everything settles. Corinth's family controls 3 provinces. We need that alliance." "The king already refused once." "He'll change his mind. He has to." A pause. "Have you found the girl yet?" Elara's blood turned to ice. "No trace. If she came to the city, she's hidden well. Find her. The Dowager wants this finished before the full moon. If the girl transforms in public, if anyone sees what she is—" The regent's voice dropped. "We can't let that happen. Not again." "What about the king? He's been asking questions." "Let him ask. He can't see the answers." Footsteps started moving away. "Double the guard on the city gates. She can't have gone far." Elara pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. They were hunting her. and they knew about the transformations. Not again, the regent had said. What did that mean? Had this happened before? Had someone else? A hand grabbed her shoulder and spun her around. She found herself face to face with a young woman in servant's clothes, maybe 18, with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. "You're new," the girl said. It wasn't a question. Elara's hand went to the knife hidden in her belt. "Just started this week." "Right. And you just happened to be listening to the Lord Regent's private conversation?" "I was delivering Save it." The girl glanced around, then pulled Elara into an empty pantry and shut the door. "I know who you are." Elara's knife was out before she could think. "Then you should know I'm dangerous." "So am I." The girl didn't look scared. "My name's Lyra. I work in the royal apartments, and I've been watching you since you snuck in 3 days ago." "If you know who I am, why haven't you turned me in?" "Because I don't think you're the villain they're making you out to be." Lyra crossed her arms. "The Dowager's been spreading rumors, saying you're a monster, a threat to the realm, that you killed people before you were contained, but I did some digging, and you know what I found? What? Nothing. No records of violence, no incidents, no bodies, just a girl who disappeared 5 years ago, and a lot of people desperate to keep her gone." Lyra's expression hardened. "So I'm going to ask you straight. Did you hurt anyone?" Elara lowered the knife slowly. "I don't know. I don't remember." "What do you remember?" "A cabin, a man who drugged me, and orders to kill me before the next full moon." Elara met Lyra's eyes. "I don't know what I am, but I know someone powerful wants me dead, and I think it's because of my name." "Voss." Lyra nodded. "Yeah, that name's been scrubbed from palace records. But I found something in the old archives, a marriage certificate. Lord Terran Voss married the old king's sister 26 years ago. They had a daughter." The room tilted. "My father was the king's cousin by marriage, which made you family." The word came out strangled. "I was part of the royal family." "You were, until your parents died in a fire. Officially, you died with them, but clearly," Lyra gestured at Elara, "that didn't happen." Elara's legs gave out. She sat hard on a barrel of flour, trying to process. Her father had been nobility. She'd been raised in this palace, probably, had known the king when they were both younger. "The fire," Elara said. "Was it really an accident?" Lyra's silence was answer enough. "Who ordered it?" "I don't know for sure, but the Dowager became queen 3 months before it happened, and she spent the last 5 years consolidating power." Lyra crouched down, meeting Elara's eyes. "Here's what I think. You're not just a girl who got caught in the crossfire. You're a threat to someone's claim, and they've been keeping you drugged and hidden because killing you outright would raise too many questions. Then why kill me now? Because the king refused his betrothal, because he's been unstable, because—" Lyra hesitated. "Because the full moon is in 5 days, and they're afraid of what you might do, or what you might remember." The transformations. During those nights, her mind was clearer. The drugs didn't work as well. If she transformed here, in the city, with her memories intact, she'd remember who ordered the fire, who killed her parents. "I need to see the king," Elara said. "That's suicide." "He told me my name meant something. He knows more than he's saying." Elara stood. "Can you get me to him?" Lyra looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're going to get us both killed. Probably. Fine. But we do this my way. Tonight, after the council meeting. He always walks the Eastern Garden alone. Says he likes the quiet. I can get you in, but after that, you're on your own." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." That night, Lyra led Elara through a maze of servant passages to the Eastern Garden. It was smaller than Elara expected, enclosed by high walls, filled with night-blooming flowers that smelled like honey and smoke. The king was already there. He stood at the center, head tilted back like he was looking at stars he couldn't see. He'd changed from the formal clothes into something simpler, dark shirt, dark pants, no crown or chain. Just a man. Alone. Elara stepped into the garden. He turned immediately. "You didn't leave." "No. I told you to run." "I'm done running." She moved closer. "You know who I am? Tell me why they want me dead." Because you're dangerous. Everyone keeps saying that, but no one will tell me why. Kale's jaw tightened. You really don't remember? I remember flashes, my parents, the fire, but not, she swallowed. Not what I am, what I can do. He was quiet for a long time. Then, your father was a shifter, so was his father. It's in your blood, the ability to transform, to take another shape. Most shifters can control it. But you, he paused. You were different, even as a child. Your transformations were stronger, faster, and when you changed, you didn't always remember what you'd done. Elara's stomach dropped. Did I hurt someone? No, but you could have. Kale turned toward her, his blind eyes somehow finding hers. The Dowager convinced the council you were too dangerous to live. She argued that an uncontrolled shifter in the royal family was a threat to the realm. Your father fought her. He said you were just young, that you'd learn control. But then, the fire. Yes, his voice was hard. The fire that killed your parents and was supposed to kill you, but someone, I never found out who, got you out, hid you, kept you alive, and drugged me so I couldn't transform, so I couldn't remember. The full moon is when shifters are strongest, when control is hardest. If you transformed here, in the city, during a full moon, Kale shook his head. The Dowager would have all the proof she needed that you're a monster, and the council would order your execution. Elara's hands were shaking. So what am I supposed to do? Keep running forever? Yes. That's not good enough. It's the only option that keeps you alive. I don't want to just survive anymore. She stepped closer, anger rising. I want answers. I want justice. I want to know who gave the order to burn my parents alive and erase me from existence. You already know who? Say it. Kale's expression was pained. The Dowager Queen Ceres, my stepmother, the woman who raised me after my father died. Then help me stop her. I can't. The words came out rough. She has the council. She has the military. If I move against her without proof, I'll be declared unfit to rule and she'll take the throne as regent, and the first thing she'll do is make sure you're dead. Then get proof. How? She's been covering her tracks for 5 years. Elara pulled the pendant from under her shirt and held it out. This was my mother's, your aunt's. If DNA testing exists here, this proves who I am, that I didn't die in the fire. Kale reached out, his fingers brushing the pendant. He went very still. Where did you get this? I've had it. It was hidden in Greaves' saddlebags. He must have kept it as insurance. Greaves? Kale's voice went cold. The man who held you? Yes. He's probably dead now, or he will be soon. The Dowager's cleaning up loose ends. Kale was silent, his hand still touching the pendant. Then, there's a witness. Someone who was there the night of the fire. If we can find them, get them to testify. Who? I don't know their name, but my aunt, your mother, she had a personal guard, female, scarred face. She disappeared after the fire, but I've heard rumors she's still alive, hiding in the southern provinces. Hope flared in Elara's chest. We find her, we get proof. We? Kale's mouth curved, not quite a smile. There's no we in this. You're not involving me. You're already involved, the moment you decided to warn me instead of turning me in. That was a mistake. No, it wasn't. Elara reached out, put her hand over his where it still rested on the pendant. The jolt hit again. That electric shock, deeper this time. Kale inhaled sharply. What is that? Elara whispered. I don't know. But it's been there since the moment I touched you in the storm. His fingers curled around hers. It feels like recognition. Yes. They stood there, hands clasped, the pendant between them. Elara's pulse hammered. This was insane. She barely knew him, but something about being near him felt right in a way nothing else had since she'd woken up in that cabin. A bell rang in the distance. Kyle released her hand abruptly and stepped back. You need to go. The guard change is in 5 minutes. Come with me. I can't just leave the palace. I'm the king. You're cursed and trapped and surrounded by people who want to control you. Elara's voice was urgent. Help me find the witness. Help me bring down the Dowager, and maybe we both get free. Kale's jaw worked. She could see him calculating, weighing options, then he turned away. There's a carriage that leaves for the southern provinces at dawn. Supply run, but there's room. Meet me at the south stables at first light. Don't be late. You're coming. I'm insane, apparently. He started walking toward the palace. If anyone asks, you were never here. Elara watched him go, her heart racing. She'd done it. Convinced a king to go rogue. This was either brilliant or the stupidest thing she'd ever done. Probably both. She slipped out of the garden and made her way back through the servant passages. Lyra was waiting at the exit, eyes wide. Well, he's coming with me. What? Elara, you can't just... The king can't leave without an escort, without permission from the council. Watch us. Elara gripped Lyra's arm. If anyone asks, you never saw me. Understand? You're going to start a war. Good. Maybe it's time. Dawn came cold and gray. Elara reached the south stables before the sun broke the horizon, keeping to the shadows. The carriage was already loaded, 2 horses hitched and ready. A driver sat up front checking harnesses. No sign of the king. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he'd realized how insane this was and decided, ready? Elara spun. Kale stood behind her, dressed in plain traveler's clothes, a pack slung over his shoulder. He looked different without the formal attire, younger, more human. You came. I said I would. He moved past her toward the carriage. Driver's loyal to me. He won't talk, but we still need to leave before the council wakes up and realizes I'm gone. They climbed into the carriage. It was cramped but private, with a small bench and shuttered windows. The moment they were inside, the driver cracked the reins and they rolled forward. Elara watched through the shutters as the palace receded behind them. She'd done it, escaped again. But this time she wasn't alone. How long until they notice you're missing? She asked. Couple hours, maybe. I left word I was indisposed and not to be disturbed until midday. That gives us a head start. And then? Then they'll send people after us. Kyle leaned back against the seat. Lots of people. The Dowager will make sure of it. Regrets? Too many to count. But he was almost smiling. What about you? Same. They rode in silence for a while, the carriage rattling over rough roads. Elara couldn't stop glancing at him, this blind king who'd somehow become her ally, her partner. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Kale was silent for a long time. Then, because I'm tired of being controlled, tired of pretending the curse doesn't matter, that I'm fine, that I can rule a kingdom I can't even see. He turned his head toward her. And because when I touched you, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Hope. The word hung between them. The driver called back, Checkpoint ahead, Your Majesty. Kale's expression shut down. Let me do the talking. The carriage slowed to a stop. Voices outside, guards demanding papers, asking questions. Elara held her breath. Then the door opened. A guard peered in, saw Kyle, and immediately straightened. Your Majesty, we weren't informed you'd be traveling. Last-minute decision, inspecting the southern outposts. Kale's voice was pure authority. Is there a problem? No, sire. Of course not. The guard glanced at Elara. Who's this? My attendant. She assists me since I can't see. You have an issue with that? No, Your Majesty. Safe travels. The door closed. The carriage rolled forward. Elara exhaled. That was close. It'll get worse. Word will spread that I'm traveling. By tonight, the Dowager will know. Then we move fast. They traveled for 3 days, stopping only to change horses and grab food. The southern provinces were different from the north, warmer, greener, the land rolling instead of mountainous. Small villages dotted the landscape, people working fields and tending livestock. On the 3rd night, they reached a town called Ashford. The carriage driver knew an inn that asked no questions. They took a room, one room, because 2 would raise suspicions, and Elara tried not to think about how intimate this all was. Kale sat on the bed, exhausted. The journey had been hard on him. He hid it well, but she could see the strain in his face. The guard's name was Marin, he said. Your mother's personal guard. If she's alive, she'd be in her 50s now, scarred from a blade across her left cheek. That's not much to go on. It's all we have. Kale rubbed his face. I'll start asking around tomorrow, quietly. Elara moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. The moon was waxing, 3/4 full. 2 days until it was complete. 2 days until she lost control again. Kael, she said quietly. What if I can't control the transformation this time? What if I hurt someone? Then we'll deal with it. How? He stood, moved toward her with that uncanny accuracy. His hand found her shoulder. I won't let you hurt anyone, and I won't let anyone hurt you. That's a dangerous promise. I'm a dangerous man. She turned to face him. They were close. Too close. She could feel the heat coming off him, smell leather and pine. Why do you trust me? She whispered. I don't know, but I do. His hand moved from her shoulder to her face, fingers tracing her jaw. And that terrifies me more than anything the Dowager could do. Elara's breath caught. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Then someone screamed outside. They both spun toward the window. In the street below, people were running, shouting. Fire bloomed in the distance, a building burning. What's happening? Kael demanded. Elara looked closer, and her blood turned to ice. Soldiers, wearing the Dowager's colors. Damn it, she found us. More screams. The sound of horses, steel clashing. The soldiers were tearing through the town, searching. We have to run, Elara said. Where? They'll have the roads blocked. Then we go off-road, into the forest. They grabbed their packs and ran, slipping out the back of the inn. The forest was a dark wall beyond the town's edge. Elara led the way, Kael's hand on her shoulder as they crashed through underbrush. Behind them, voices shouted, Find them! The Dowager wants them alive! They ran harder, branches tearing at clothes and skin. Elara's lungs burned. Beside her, Kael was breathing hard but keeping pace. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. They're catching up, she gasped. Keep going, don't stop. But the horses were faster, much faster. Elara could hear them closing in, could hear men shouting orders. They burst into a clearing and skidded to a stop. Soldiers surrounded them, at least a dozen, mounted and armed. At the center sat a woman on a white horse, beautiful and cold, wearing a crown of silver thorns. The Dowager Queen. Hello, Elara, Sarah said, her voice smooth as poison. It's been a long time. Elara's hand went to her knife. Not long enough. And Kael, my dear stepson, Sarah smiled, sneaking out of the palace like a common criminal. What would your father think? My father's dead because of you, Kael said flatly. Careful. That sounds like an accusation. It is. Sarah laughed. Prove it. Oh, wait, you can't. Because the only witness is dead, and the only evidence is a traumatized girl who doesn't even remember her own name half the time. Elara's rage spiked. I remember enough. Do you? Tell me then, who killed your parents? Who gave the order? Sarah leaned forward in her saddle. You don't know. You'll never know. Because I made sure of it. She just confessed, Kael said. To you, a blind king and a shifter abomination. Neither of you will live long enough to tell anyone. Saris gestured, and the soldiers raised crossbows. It's a shame, really. If you'd stayed hidden, Elara, you could have lived. But you had to come back, had to poke at old wounds. Now you'll die for it. The crossbows aimed. Elara's vision blurred. Heat surged through her body, the transformation starting early, triggered by rage and fear. Her bones began to ache, her skin prickling. Elara, Kael said urgently. Don't. I can't stop it. Yes, you can. Listen to me. Fire, Saris ordered. The crossbows twanged, and Elara exploded. Not literally, but the transformation ripped through her faster than it ever had before. 1 second she was human, the next she was something else. Bigger, stronger, fur and fangs and claws, a beast standing on 4 legs with murder in her eyes. The crossbow bolts hit her and bounced off, her hide too thick to penetrate. She roared, a sound that shook the trees and sent horses rearing in panic. Then she lunged. The soldiers scattered. Elara moved like liquid violence, taking down men and horses with brutal efficiency. She didn't kill. Some instinct held her back from that. But she broke bones, tore armor, sent soldiers fleeing into the forest. Saris wheeled her horse around, face pale with shock. What is she? Everything you were afraid of, Kael said. Elara turned toward the Dowager Queen, growling low in her chest. Cerys kicked her horse into a gallop and ran. Elara chased. The forest blurred around her. She was faster than the horse, stronger. Her senses heightened to impossible levels. She could hear Cerys' heartbeat, smell her fear. The Dowager was shouting for help, but her soldiers were too scattered, too terrified. Elara closed the distance in seconds and leaped, hitting the horse's flank. The animal went down screaming. Cerys tumbled from the saddle and hit the ground hard. She tried to crawl away. Elara stalked closer, placing one massive paw on the woman's back and pinning her there. "Please," Cerys gasped. "Don't. I was just protecting the realm. You're dangerous." Elara's jaws opened, inches from the Dowager's throat. One bite. That's all it would take. Justice for her parents, for 5 years stolen, for everything. But then she heard Kael's voice in her head. "I won't let you hurt anyone." And she realized if she killed Cerys, she'd become exactly what the Dowager had always claimed she was. A monster. Uncontrollable. Elara stepped back. The transformation reversed, painful and sudden, leaving her kneeling naked in the dirt, gasping. Soldiers were emerging from the trees now, surrounding her. She'd failed. Failed to kill the enemy. Failed to escape. Failed! Then light exploded across her vision. Not external light. Internal. Something deep inside her cracking open. Memories flooding back in a torrent. She saw her mother's face clearly now. Saw her father laughing. Saw herself as a child running through the palace halls. Saw the night of the fire. Her mother shoving her into the arms of a scarred woman, shouting, "Run! Protect her! Don't let them find her!" And she saw Kael, years younger, standing in a throne room, blind and furious, demanding to know who'd ordered the fire. The Dowager standing beside him, soothing, lying. "It was an accident, my dear. A terrible accident. The lies. All lies." Elara's eyes opened, and when they did, they weren't her normal pale green. They were gold, glowing. And across the clearing, Kael gasped. Because for the first time in 10 years, he could see. The world came into focus for the first time in a decade. Kael Draven saw stars overhead. Actual stars. Not the endless dark he'd lived with since the curse took his sight. He saw trees, silver lit by moonlight. He saw soldiers frozen in shock, weapons half raised. And he saw her. Elara knelt in the clearing, naked and covered in dirt and blood, her eyes blazing gold like twin suns. Power radiated from her in waves he could actually see now, a shimmer in the air, distorting reality around her. "Elara," he said, his voice breaking on her name. Her head turned toward him, those impossible eyes focusing. For a moment he thought she didn't recognize him. Then her expression crumbled. "Kael, your eyes. I can see." He took a step toward her, then another, unable to stop himself. "I can see you." The soldiers were recovering from their shock, raising weapons again. Cerys scrambled to her feet, face twisted with rage and fear. "Kill her!" the Dowager screamed. "Kill them both!" But before anyone could move, something crashed through the trees behind them, something massive. Another shifter fully transformed, bigger than Elara had been. It landed between the soldiers and Elara with a roar that shook the ground. The soldiers fell back, terrified. The shifter turned its head, a scarred face, one eye missing, but unmistakable. Female. Older. And around her neck hung a tarnished silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "Marin," Kael breathed. The shifter, Marin, shifted back to human form. She was in her 50s, built like a fighter, scars covering half her body. She stood naked and unashamed, eyes locked on Cerys. "Hello, Your Majesty," Marin said, her voice rough as gravel. "Been a long time." Cerys went pale. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah, well, I'm difficult to kill." Marin moved to stand beside Elara, who was still kneeling, shaking. "Unlike the people you murdered." "I murdered no one. The fire was an accident." "Liar." Marin's voice cracked like a whip. "I was there. I saw your men set it, saw them bar the doors so no one could escape. And I heard you give the order, burn it all, leave no survivors." The clearing went silent, except for the sound of wind in the trees. Cerys' face twisted. "You have no proof. It's your word against mine." "Actually," a new voice said, "she has us too." More figures emerged from the forest, dozens of them, townsfolk from Ashford carrying torches and makeshift weapons. At the front was the innkeeper who'd given them a room, flanked by others who looked equally grim. "We heard everything," the innkeeper said. "Your men weren't exactly quiet when they came through town, bragging about finally finishing what you started 5 years ago. How you ordered the Voss family burned alive." She spat at Ceres's feet. "We might not be nobility, but we're not deaf." Kyle felt something shift in his chest. The people. The common people, who the Dowager had always dismissed as irrelevant. They were standing up, bearing witness. He moved forward, addressing the soldiers who still surrounded them. "You heard her confession. You heard the witness testimony. As your king, I'm ordering you to stand down and place the Dowager Queen under arrest." The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. Their captain, a grizzled man with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, the Dowager commands the Royal Guard. We can't just—" "Yes, you can." Cale's voice was hard. "Because I'm not blind anymore. Whatever curse kept me weak, kept me controlled, it's broken. And I'm not asking, I'm ordering. Arrest her. Now." The captain hesitated for one more moment. Then he turned to his men and nodded. They moved toward Ceres. She backed away, hands raised. "You can't do this. I'm royalty. I have rights." "So did Elara's parents," Kyle said coldly. "You didn't care about their rights when you had them murdered." Two soldiers grabbed Ceres's arms. She struggled, screaming curses, but they held firm. Kale turned to Marin. "You'll testify? Publicly?" "Been waiting 5 years for the chance." Marin looked down at Elara, who was still on her knees, shaking. "Kid, you okay?" Elara shook her head. I remember everything." Her voice was small, broken. Kyle moved to her side, shrugged off his coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She clutched it like a lifeline. "My mother pushed me into Marin's arms," Elara whispered. "Told her to run. The last thing I saw was my father trying to break down the door from inside. He was screaming my name, and then," her voice cracked, "then the whole building went up. So fast. Too fast." "Accelerant," Marin said grimly. "They'd soaked the walls in oil, never had a chance." Elara looked up at Ceres, who'd stopped struggling and was now staring at her with cold hatred. "Why? What did we do to you?" "You existed," Ceres said. "Your father was too close to the throne. Your mother had the old king's ear, and you—" She laughed bitterly. "You were a shifter with royal blood. Do you know what that means? It means you could have challenged for the crown. You could have taken everything I worked for. I was a child. Children grow up." Ceres's expression was vicious. "I did what I had to do to secure my position, and I'd do it again." Elara lunged for her. Kyle caught her around the waist, holding her back even as she fought him. "Don't. She's not worth it." "She killed them. She took everything." "I know. But if you kill her now, you lose the moral high ground. Let the law handle her." Kale tightened his grip. "Trust me. Please." Elara went limp in his arms, sobbing. Kale held her while she shook apart, this woman who'd been alone and hunted for 5 years finally letting herself break. The innkeeper approached, carrying a blanket. "Here, miss, you know." Elara took it with shaking hands, wrapped it around herself. The innkeeper looked at her with something like pity. "My daughter was killed by a noble's carriage 3 years ago," the woman said quietly. "Driver didn't even stop. I spent months trying to get justice, but the nobles closed ranks. Told me it was an accident, that I should be grateful they didn't charge my daughter with damage to the carriage." Her jaw tightened. "So yeah, I'll testify too. And I know about 30 other people who'll stand with you against that bitch." More murmurs of agreement from the crowd. Kyle looked at them, really looked, now that he could see, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but possibility. "We're going back to Iron Peak," he said, "and we're calling an emergency council session. All of you who want to testify, you're under royal protection. Anyone who tries to stop you answers to me." The captain stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the council won't like this. The Lord Regent—" "The Lord Regent," Kale interrupted, "has been taking orders from the Dowager for years. I've been blind, but I wasn't deaf. I heard the whispers, the deals. He's complicit." Kale's voice hardened. so he can answer for his crimes too. They traveled through the night, a strange caravan, royal soldiers escorting their prisoners, common folk walking alongside a king who could finally see them, and two shifters who'd just changed the course of history. Marin stayed close to Elara, protective. They didn't talk much, but there was understanding between them, survivor to survivor. "How did you find us?" Elara asked finally. "Been tracking you since you left Grey Hollow. Kept my distance, made sure you didn't get killed." Marin glanced at her. "Your mother made me promise. If anything happened to her, I was supposed to protect you. Took me a year to find where they'd stashed you. By the time I did, you were already drugged senseless and guarded around the clock. Couldn't get you out without starting a war. So you've been watching all this time, waiting for the right moment. When you ran, I figured it was now or never." Marin smiled slightly. "You did good, kid. Your parents would be proud." Elara's throat tightened. She wanted to ask more, about her parents, about what they were like, about the life she'd lost, but the words wouldn't come. Everything was too raw. Kale rode beside them, his new sight still clearly overwhelming him. He kept looking around like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "Does it hurt?" Elara asked quietly. "What?" "Seeing again, after so long." He considered. "It's like being born. Everything's too bright, too sharp. My brain keeps trying to map sounds to locations like before, but now I have visuals too, and they don't always match." He looked at her. "But no, it doesn't hurt. How did it happen? The curse breaking?" "I don't know. One moment I was blind, the next." He paused. "It was when your eyes changed, when you looked at me. I felt something shift, like a door opening." Marin made a sound, half laugh, half grunt. "Oh, that's what this is." They both looked at her. "You two are bonded," Marin said. "It's rare, but it happens sometimes between shifters, or between a shifter and someone with power in their blood. You share energy, strength. When she fully awakened," Marin gestured at Elara, "it broke whatever was blocking yours." "So his curse is gone because of me?" Elara's voice was uncertain. Curses are usually just locked power. Someone, probably the Dowager, found a way to bind his abilities when he was younger. But a bond like yours? That's older magic, stronger, can't be contained. Marin's expression was thoughtful. "You're going to be formidable together if you survive the next few days." That was the question, wasn't it? They had testimony, they had witnesses, they had the Dowager in chains, but the Lord Regent still controlled the military. The council was split, and there was no guarantee they'd side with a blind, now-seeing king and a girl who'd been legally dead for 5 years. They reached Iron Peak at dawn. Word had spread ahead of them somehow. Maybe runners, maybe just rumor traveling at the speed of gossip. The streets were packed with people, all staring as the caravan passed. Some looked hostile, others curious, many just confused. At the palace gates, they were met by the Lord Regent himself, flanked by a dozen armed guards. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone cold. "What is the meaning of this?" "I'm bringing charges of murder and conspiracy against the Dowager Queen," Kael said. "And I'm calling an emergency session of the council to hear evidence." The regent's eyes flicked to Ceres, who was still in chains, then to Elara. "That girl is dead, legally. You're parading a corpse." "I'm standing right here," Elara snapped. "Legally dead," the regent repeated, "which means she has no standing, no rights, and no claim to anything. This is a farce." "Then we'll resurrect her legally." Kael dismounted, moving with new confidence. "I'm the king. I can issue a royal decree restoring her identity." "You need council approval for that." "Actually, I don't. The king's right of restoration can be invoked in cases of proven wrongful death. It hasn't been used in a century, but it's still on the books." Kael smiled thinly. "I've had a lot of time to read law. Being blind gave me very few hobbies." The regent's jaw tightened. "This is a coup. No, this is justice. Open the gates." For a long moment, nobody moved. The regent's hand drifted toward his sword. The soldiers behind him tensed. Then Lyra appeared at the gate, flanked by a dozen other servants. "Open it," she called to the guards. "The king gave an order." "You don't have authority," the regent started. "No, but they do." Lyra gestured and more people appeared, dozens, then hundreds, palace staff, city workers, merchants. regular people flooding the courtyard. We heard what happened in Ashford. We heard the Dowager's confession, and we're saying enough is enough. The regent looked at the crowd, at the sheer number of them, and something in his face shifted. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Fine, he said. Council session in 1 hour, but if you can't prove your claims, Your Majesty, then you're the one who'll face charges. Understood? Perfectly. The gates opened. The council chamber was packed. All 12 council members sat in their high-backed chairs, arranged in a semicircle. Behind them, the gallery was filled with nobles, officials, and thanks to Kael's order, common citizens who demanded entry. It was unprecedented, scandalous, exactly what they needed. Kael stood at the center, Elara beside him. They'd found her proper clothes, simple but clean, nothing that screamed royalty. The pendant hung visible around her neck. The Lord Regent called the session to order. We're here to address charges brought by the king against Dowager Queen Cerys. Your Majesty, present your evidence. Kael gestured to Marin, who stepped forward. For the next 30 minutes, Marin testified. She described the night of the fire in brutal detail, how she'd been on duty, how she'd seen armed men surrounding the Voss residence, how she'd heard the Dowager's voice giving orders, how she'd barely gotten Elara out alive. You expect us to believe, one council member said, that the Dowager would risk everything to kill a minor noble family? Not minor, Marin said. Lord Terran Voss was the old king's nephew. His wife was the king's sister. Their daughter, she looked at Elara, had a legitimate claim to the throne if something happened to Kael. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. That's absurd, the regent said. The girl was what, 10? She posed no threat. She was a shifter, Cerys said from where she sat in chains. Her voice was calm, controlled. An uncontrollable one. She'd already had incidents, attacking other children, destroying property during transformations. I acted to protect the realm. Liar, Elara's voice rang out. I never attacked anyone. You made that up to justify murdering my family. Prove it. I can, said another voice. An elderly woman stepped forward from the gallery. She wore healer's robes, her face lined with age. My name is Healer Theron. I was the palace physician 20 years ago. I treated young Elara Voss several times after her transformations. She looked at the council. She was frightened, confused, but never violent. I have records, medical notes documenting every incident. She produced a leather-bound journal and handed it to the council members. They passed it around, reading. These notes say she had excellent control for her age, one member said slowly. No aggression, no attacks. Because there were none, Theron said. The Dowager fabricated those stories after the fire to cover her crime. More murmurs, louder now. The regent held up a hand. This is circumstantial. Old notes, the testimony of a fugitive. What about this? Lyra stood, holding a document. I found it in the palace archives. A letter from the Dowager to Lord Greaves dated 6 weeks before the fire. She's offering him payment to handle the Voss situation permanently. It's in her own handwriting. She handed it to Kael, who read it aloud. The chamber erupted. Order, the regent shouted. Order! But the damage was done. Council members were arguing with each other, voices rising. In the gallery, people were shouting, some in support of Elara, others defending the Dowager. Cerys stood, chains rattling. Enough of this farce. Yes, I ordered the fire. Yes, I had them killed, because they were a threat to stability, to order. The realm needed strong leadership, not a blind boy king and a family of shifter freaks waiting to tear everything apart. The chamber went silent. I did what I had to do, Cerys continued, her voice ringing with conviction. And I do it again, because I put the realm first, always. Kael stepped forward. You put yourself first. You murdered innocent people, including your own family, to secure power. That's not leadership. That's tyranny, says the blind king who couldn't even see his own court working against him. I'm not blind anymore. Kael's eyes met hers, and Cerys flinched. And I see exactly what you are. A murderer. A traitor. And you're done. He turned to the council. I'm invoking the king's right of judgment. The Dowager Queen Cerys has confessed to murder and conspiracy. She is stripped of her titles, her lands, and her freedom. She will be held for trial and sentencing according to the law. You can't, the regent started. I can, and I am. You want to challenge me? Fine. Call a vote of no confidence. Let's see if the council still backs you after they've heard everything. Kale's voice was steel. Because I have more. Letters between you and the dowager. Records of bribes, of threats. You've been complicit from the start. The regent's face went white. You have until sunset to resign, Kale said, or I'll have you arrested too. Your choice. The regent looked around the chamber, at the council members avoiding his eyes, at the crowd in the gallery watching with hostile faces. He was alone. Completely alone. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is. Kale's expression was pitiless. You just haven't realized it yet. The regent turned and walked out. 2 guards followed him. The rest stayed. Kale turned to Elara. You have something to say. She did. She stepped forward, looking up at the council members who'd ignored her existence for 5 years. My name is Elara Voss, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Daughter of Lord Terran and Lady Ileana Voss. I was 10 years old when the dowager ordered my family murdered. I survived. I was drugged, imprisoned, erased. But I'm here now, and I'm not asking for your pity. I'm demanding justice. She pulled the pendant from around her neck and held it up. This was my mother's. It bears the royal seal. If you need proof of who I am, test it. Test me. I'll submit to any verification you want. One of the council members, an older woman with kind eyes, stood. I knew your mother. She was my friend. Her voice wavered. I thought you were dead. We all did. That's what she wanted you to think, Elara pointed at Saris. She wanted me erased, forgotten. But I won't be, not anymore. The council member looked at the others. I move that we restore Elara Voss's legal status and launch a full investigation into the dowager's crimes. All in favor? Hands went up, one by one. Not all of them. 3 members abstained, but it was enough. Motion carries. The council member smiled at Elara. Welcome back, Lady Voss. The gallery erupted in cheers. Elara stood there, stunned. She'd done it. Actually done it. 5 years of running, of hiding, of being nobody. And now she was somebody again. Kael's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Told you, he murmured. Justice. That night, after the chaos settled and the council dispersed, Elara found herself in the Eastern Garden again, the place where this had all started. Kael was already there, standing under the stars he could finally see. You should be celebrating, he said without turning around. So should you. Your curse is broken, the dowager's in chains, the regents resigned. You won. We won. He looked at her. I couldn't have done this without you. I couldn't have survived without you. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kael said, The council's going to want answers about us, about what happened in that clearing. What do we tell them? The truth. That we're bonded. That whatever we are together is stronger than what we are apart. He moved closer. Is that okay with you? Elara looked up at him. This king who'd risked everything to help her, who'd somehow become her anchor in the storm. Yeah, it's okay. He smiled and it transformed his face. Good, because I'm not great at letting people go. Lucky for you, I'm not great at leaving. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been, but had always belonged. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Kael rested his forehead against hers. We still have work to do, he said. The trial, rebuilding your family's reputation, dealing with whatever political fallout comes from all this. I know. It's going to be hard. Everything worth doing is, he laughed softly. When did you get so wise? About the time I stopped running and started fighting back. Elara took his hand. We'll figure it out. Together. Together, Kael agreed. Above them, the full moon rose, no longer a symbol of pain and fear, but of transformation and truth. Elara looked up at it and felt something inside her settle. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of terror. Whatever it was, she'd earned it. They both had. The trial began 3 weeks later. Elara stood in the grand hall, a massive chamber of stone and glass where generations of monarchs had dispensed justice. She'd been here before as a child, though the memories were hazy. Back then, she'd thought it beautiful. Now it just felt cold. The hall was packed. Every noble family had sent representatives. Merchants, guild leaders, farmers from the provinces. Anyone who could claim a right to witness had come. This wasn't just about the dowager anymore. It was about whether the old order would hold or if something new was being born. Ceres sat in the defendant's box, dressed in plain gray, her crown confiscated. She looked smaller without the trappings of power, but her eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Even now she thought she could win. Kyle presided from the throne, the first time he'd sat there since regaining his sight. He wore black and silver, the traditional colors of judgment, and his presence commanded the room in a way it never had when he was blind. People watched him differently now, with respect, with fear. Elara sat in the witness gallery beside Marin, who'd cleaned up for the occasion but still looked like she could kill someone with her bare hands. On Elara's other side was Lyra, who'd been officially appointed as Elara's attendant, a fancy title for bodyguard and friend. "You nervous?" Lyra whispered. "Terrified." "Good. Means you care about getting this right." The Lord High Justice, a stern woman in her 60s named Magistrate Corwin, called the court to order. She'd been brought in from the eastern provinces specifically because she had no ties to the capital, no loyalty to the dowager or the council. Neutral ground. This court is convened to hear charges against Ceres Val Thorne, Dowager Queen of Iron Peak, Corwin announced. The charges are murder, conspiracy to commit murder, abuse of power, and treason. How does the defendant plead? Ceres stood. Not guilty. A ripple of surprise went through the hall. After her confession in the council chamber, everyone assumed she'd admit guilt and argue for leniency. The defense acknowledges, Ceres's lawyer said, a sharp-faced man named Corvain, that my client made certain statements under duress. However, we maintain that her actions, if any did occur, were necessary to protect the realm from a legitimate threat. A child was a legitimate threat? Corwin's tone was ice. A shifter child with royal blood and no control over her transformations? Yes. Corvain looked directly at Elara. The defendant believed, based on expert testimony available at the time, that Lady Elara Voss posed a danger to herself and others. The fire was a tragic accident, nothing more. Liar, Elara said, loud enough to carry. The magistrate held up a hand. You'll have your chance to speak, Lady Voss. Prosecution, present your evidence. The prosecution was led by an old friend of Elara's father, Lord Davion, who'd been waiting 20 years for a chance to take down the dowager. He was thorough and merciless. First came Marin's testimony, expanded in excruciating detail. She described watching from the shadows as men in the dowager's livery surrounded the Voss residence, how they'd carried barrels of accelerant, how they'd waited until the family was asleep before setting the blaze. "And you're certain they were the dowager's men?" Davion asked. "I recognized 3 of them. One was Captain Thrace, who commanded her personal guard. He's dead now. Convenient timing, that. Killed in a border skirmish 6 months after the fire." "Objection," Corvain said. "Speculation." "Sustained," Corwin said. "Stick to facts, witness." Marin's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "I saw what I saw, and I heard the dowager's voice giving orders from a carriage 50 yards away." "Could you see her face?" "No, but I know her voice. Worked in the palace for 15 years before that night." Next came Healer Theron, who presented her medical records in detail. Charts showing Elara's transformations, her progress in learning control, her complete lack of violent incidents. "In your professional opinion," Davion asked, "did Elara Voss pose a danger to others?" "No more than any child learning their abilities. She was young, sometimes clumsy, but never aggressive. I specifically noted in my records that she showed remarkable self-awareness for her age." "Would you have recommended she be killed?" Theron looked horrified. "Absolutely not. That would be monstrous." No further questions. Corvain stood for cross-examination. "But she did transform uncontrollably, correct? During full moons?" "All young shifters struggle with full moons. It's the strongest time. Yes or no, healer? Did she transform uncontrollably?" "Sometimes, but—" "Thank you." No further questions. The pattern repeated through the day. Witness after witness testified to Elara's character, to the dowager's manipulation, to the suspicious circumstances around the fire. Each time, Corvain chipped away at the edges, planting doubt. By evening, when they adjourned, Elara felt sick. "She's going to get away with it," she said to Kael as they walked back to the private chambers. "Her lawyer's too good." "He's creating reasonable doubt. It's what lawyers do." Kael's hand found hers. "But we have one more witness tomorrow, the one that matters most." "Who?" "You." Elara's stomach dropped. "I can't. What if I mess up? What if I say something wrong and she walks free?" "You won't." Kael stopped, turned to face her. "You've survived 5 years of hell. You tracked down the truth when everyone said it was impossible. You faced down a woman who wanted you dead and didn't kill her even when you had the chance." His hands framed her face. "You're the strongest person I know, and tomorrow you're going to tell your story. That's all you need to do. What if it's not enough? Then we'll deal with it, together." She wanted to believe him, but fear was a cold weight in her chest. That night, she dreamed of fire again, but this time she didn't run. She walked through the flames, untouched, and on the other side found her parents waiting. They smiled at her, proud, loving, and then faded into light. When she woke, the fear was still there, but so was something else: determination. The next morning, Elara took the stand. The hall was even more packed than the day before. Word had spread that the victim herself would testify. People stood in the aisles, pressed against walls. Outside, crowds gathered to hear reports from those inside. Magistrate Corwin administered the oath. Elara's voice shook on the words but held. Lord Davion approached gently. "Lady Voss, please tell the court what you remember of the night your parents died." Elara took a breath. "I was 10. It was late. I'd been asleep. My mother woke me. She was scared. I could tell, but trying not to show it. She said we had to go right now. No time to pack." "Did she say why?" "She said someone was coming. Someone dangerous." Elara's hands clenched in her lap. "My father was already at the door, trying to see what was happening outside. I heard men shouting. Then I smelled smoke." "What happened next?" "Everything moved fast. The smoke got thicker. My father tried to break the door down, but it was barred from outside. My mother pushed me toward Marin. She was our guard. I trusted her completely and told her to get me out through the window." Elara's voice cracked. She paused, gathered herself. "Marin grabbed me and jumped. We landed hard. I looked back and saw the house was already completely on fire. I heard my father screaming my name. I tried to go back, but Marin held me. She said—" Elara swallowed. "She said they were already gone, that we had to run or we'd die too." The hall was silent except for occasional sniffles from the gallery. "What happened after that?" Davion asked softly. "Marin carried me into the forest. We hid. The next day she found Greaves, a hunter she thought she could trust. She paid him to take me somewhere safe, somewhere the dowager couldn't find me. He was supposed to protect me. Instead, he kept me drugged for 5 years in a cabin in the middle of nowhere." "Why drugs?" "To suppress my memories, to keep me from transforming, to make me—" Elara looked directly at Saris. "To make me disappear." "Did Greaves tell you who paid him?" "No, but before I escaped, I overheard a woman giving him orders. She said the queen wanted me dead before the next full moon, that there should be no loose ends." "Did you recognize the voice?" "Not then, but later when I came to Iron Peak, I heard the dowager speak. It was the same voice." Corvain stood. "Objection. The witness was drugged at the time of this alleged conversation. Her memory is unreliable." "The witness has proven her memory is intact," Davion countered. "She remembered the fire, remembered Marin, remembered details that have been corroborated by other testimony." "Overruled," Corwin said. "The witness may answer." Elara continued, describing her escape, her journey, her meeting with Kael. She left nothing out: the transformations, the fear, the desperate scramble to understand who she was. "And when you finally learned the truth," Davion said, "when you discovered the dowager had ordered your family killed, what did you do?" "I wanted revenge. I wanted her to hurt the way I'd hurt." Elara's voice was steady now. "But I didn't kill her. Even when I had the chance, when I'd transformed and had her pinned, I didn't. Because I wanted justice, real justice. Not just murder disguised as righteousness. Davion smiled slightly. Thank you, Lady Voss. No further questions. Corvain stood for cross-examination. His expression was sympathetic, which immediately put Elara on guard. Lady Voss, you've been through a terrible ordeal. No one disputes that. But I have to ask, how much of your testimony is actual memory and how much is based on what others have told you? I remember the fire clearly, the fear, the smoke, my parents, but the conversation you claim to have overheard at Greaves' cabin. You admit you were drugged at the time. Yes, and your identification of the Dowager's voice is based on hearing her speak once, briefly, after the drugs had already damaged your memory? The drugs didn't damage my memory. They suppressed it. Once I stopped taking them, but you can't be certain, can you? You can't swear under oath that the voice you heard in that cabin was definitely the Dowager's? Elara's jaw tightened. I know what I heard. What you think you heard, but you can't be certain. Corvain's voice was gentle, reasonable. And isn't it possible that in your traumatized state, you've conflated different memories? That you've built a narrative that makes sense of your suffering by blaming someone powerful? No, that's not. You were 10 years old, terrified, traumatized by watching your parents die, then drugged for 5 years. Your mind could have created false memories to explain. My mind didn't create anything. Elara stood, her voice ringing through the hall. I know what happened. I know who did it. And I know you're trying to twist my words to protect a murderer. Lady Voss, please sit down, Corwin said. No. Elara turned to face the gallery, the hundreds of people watching. You want proof? You want certainty? Fine. Here's what I know for certain. I had a family, a good family. They loved me, protected me, taught me, and someone took them from me. Someone who was supposed to be family too, but who saw me as a threat to her power. She turned back to Saris. You can deny it all you want. Your lawyer can poke holes in my memory, question my sanity, make me sound like a traumatized child who doesn't know what's real. But we both know the truth. You ordered the fire. You paid Greaves to keep me hidden. And when I wouldn't stay hidden, you sent assassins to finish what you started. That's enough, Corvain said. Your Honor. I'm not finished. Elara's eyes blazed gold. Not transformation, just power. You took everything from me. My parents, my home, my identity. You made me into a ghost, but ghosts have a way of coming back to haunt you. Saris stood, face pale with rage. You ungrateful little... Sit down, Corwin snapped at Saris. Both of you! But Saris kept talking, her composure finally cracking. You think you're some kind of hero? You're a monster, an abomination. I should have made sure you burned with your parents instead of letting sentiment get in the way. The hall erupted. Order! Corwin shouted, banging her gavel. Order in this court! But the damage was done. Saris had just confessed. Again. In front of hundreds of witnesses. Corvain was frantically trying to get his client to shut up, but Saris was beyond listening. I did what I had to do, Saris said, her voice rising. You all act so shocked, so appalled, but you'd have done the same in my position. An uncontrolled shifter with royal blood, she would have torn this realm apart. I was a child, Elara said quietly. You were a threat. I was 10 years old and you burned my parents alive. Saris's face twisted with contempt. They should have handed you over when I gave them the chance. Instead they fought, made it messy. The fire was cleaner, faster. Kale stood from the throne, his voice cutting through the chaos. You're confessing. Under oath in open court, you're admitting to murder and conspiracy. Saris looked at him, seemed to realize what she'd done, and laughed. What does it matter? You think justice means anything? I had power for 5 years. 5 years of ruling this realm while you stumbled around blind and useless. I made decisions, shaped policy, kept us strong. What have you done? I broke your hold on this court. I exposed your crimes. And I made sure everyone knows exactly what you are. Kael's voice was cold. You're finished. Am I? Saris's smile was vicious. You think putting me in chains changes anything? The nobles who supported me, the families who profited from my reign, they're still there, still powerful. You remove me and another will take my place. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year, but eventually someone will realize what I knew all along. You're too weak to rule alone. Then it's a good thing I'm not alone. Kael looked at Elara. She's stronger than you ever were, and smarter than to mistake cruelty for strength. She's a shifter, a beast pretending to be human. She's more human than you've ever been. Saris opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to deflate. She sat down heavily, the fight draining out of her. Magistrate Corwin waited until the hall quieted. Does the defense have any further questions? Corvain shook his head, looking defeated. No, Your Honor. Then I'm ready to render a verdict. Corwin looked at Saris. Dowager Queen Saris Val Thorne, this court finds you guilty on all charges. The evidence is overwhelming, corroborated by multiple witnesses, and you've confessed in open court twice. Saris said nothing. You murdered innocent people to consolidate power. You abused your position, corrupted the institutions meant to serve justice, and caused immeasurable suffering to a child under your protection. Corwin's voice was hard. Your actions are not just criminal, they're monstrous. She paused, letting the words sink in. The sentence is as follows. You are stripped of all titles, lands, and privileges. You will spend the remainder of your life in the high-security facility at Blackstone Prison. You will have no contact with the outside world, no visitors except legal counsel, and no possibility of parole. Saris lifted her chin. I regret nothing. That, Corwin said, is evident. Guards, remove the prisoner. They dragged Saris away. She didn't struggle, didn't look back. Just walked out with her head high, like she was going to a coronation instead of prison. The hall erupted in cheers. Elara sat down heavily, legs shaking. It was over. Actually over. The woman who'd haunted her nightmares for 5 years was going to rot in a cell. Kael was beside her immediately. You did it! We did it! No, that last part, that was all you. You magnificent, terrifying woman. She laughed, the sound coming out half sob. I can't believe it worked. Believe it. He pulled her to her feet. Come on. We need to address the crowd outside. They walked out onto the palace balcony together. Below, thousands of people packed the square. When they saw Kael and Elara, the cheering redoubled. Kael raised his hands for quiet. It took several minutes. Justice has been served, he called out. The Dowager Queen has been found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Her crimes against Lady Elara Voss and her family are answered. More cheering. But this isn't just about one woman's crimes, Kael continued. It's about a system that allowed those crimes to happen, that protected power over people, that made some of us invisible while elevating others beyond accountability. The crowd quieted, listening. That changes now. Starting today, we reform. The council will include representatives from the common people, not just nobility. The courts will be open to anyone seeking justice, not just those who can afford it. And anyone who abuses their position will answer for it, no exceptions. He looked at Elara. We're building something new, together. And it starts with recognizing that power comes with responsibility, that titles mean nothing if they're not earned, that strength isn't about who you can crush, it's about who you can protect. Elara stepped forward. For 5 years, I was nobody. Erased, hidden, forgotten. But I'm here now. And I'm not the only one who's been made invisible by people who think power means they can do whatever they want. She looked out at the crowd. The servants, the farmers, the merchants, the people who kept this realm running while nobles took credit. You matter, she said simply. Your voices matter. Your lives matter, and from now on they'll be heard. The cheering was deafening. They stayed on the balcony for an hour, waving to the crowd, letting the moment sink in. When they finally went back inside, Elara felt drained but lighter than she had in years. What happens now? She asked Kael. Now? We get to work. He smiled. The council's going to fight us on half these reforms. The nobles will resist. It's going to be messy and frustrating and probably take years. Can't wait. Liar, you're terrified. So are you. True? Kael took her hand. But we're terrified together. That helps. Does it? It's helped so far. Lyra found them in the corridor. Lady Voss, sorry, getting used to that. There's a crowd of people asking to see you. Families who've lost loved ones to noble violence, people who want to testify about abuses they've suffered. It's a lot. Elara looked at Kael, who nodded. Go. This is important. She followed Lyra to a receiving room where dozens of people waited. They took turns telling their stories, injustices small and large, pain inflicted by those who thought themselves above consequences. Elara listened to every single one, took notes, promised to bring their cases to the new council. It took hours. By the time the last person left, it was dark outside. Marin was waiting in the hall. You look exhausted. I am. Elara rubbed her eyes. But it's good exhaustion, useful. Your mother would be proud. The words hit harder than Elara expected. She blinked back tears. You think so? I know so. She fought for the same things you're fighting for, equality, justice. She just didn't live long enough to see it through. Marin's expression softened. You're finishing what she started. What will you do now? Stay here? Marin shrugged. For a while. Someone needs to train the new shifters you're going to discover. Because trust me, once word spreads that it's safe, they'll come out of hiding. Might as well make sure they don't accidentally eat someone. You think there are others? I know there are. I've met at least a dozen over the years. All terrified, all hiding, all convinced they're monsters. Marin smiled slightly. Now they've got a role model. Someone who survived, who fought back, who proved she's more than what bigots said she was. Elara hadn't thought about it that way. She'd been so focused on her own survival, her own justice, that she hadn't considered the ripple effects. I'm not sure I'm qualified to be anyone's role model. Too bad. You already are. That night, Kael found her in the Eastern Garden again. It had become their place, the spot where everything had started to change. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much in my head. Elara looked up at the stars. It's strange. I spent so long focused on just surviving, just making it to the next day. Now that the immediate threat is gone, I don't know what to do with myself. You'll figure it out. You're good at that. Am I? You infiltrated a palace, convinced a king to go rogue, tracked down a witness, exposed a conspiracy, and took down the most powerful woman in the realm. Kael sat beside her. Yeah, you're pretty good at figuring things out, Elara laughed. When you put it that way, they sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kael said, I have something for you. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to her. Inside was a ring, silver, set with a green stone the color of her eyes. Is this not an engagement ring? Not yet, anyway. Kael's voice was nervous, which was unusual for him. It's a promise that you're not alone anymore, that you have a home here, a place, people who care about you, that whatever comes next, we face it together. Elara's throat tightened. Kael, you don't have to answer now. Take your time. Think about what you want. He paused. I wanted you to know. You're not nobody. You're not a ghost. You're Elara Voss, and you're extraordinary. And She kissed him. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kael looked dazed. So that's a yes to the promise? He asked. That's a yes to everything. Elara slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fight. I'm going to drive you crazy. Already do. But I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in 5 years, I have a reason to stay. She took his hand. So yeah, together. He pulled her close, and they sat under the stars. Two people who'd been broken and lost, finding their way back to something that looked like peace. 3 months later, Elara stood in the rebuilt Voss family estate, overseeing the final preparations. The land had been returned to her by royal decree, the manor house restored from its fire-damaged shell. It had taken weeks of work, dozens of craftsmen, and more money than she wanted to think about. But it was done. Tonight was the dedication ceremony, a memorial for her parents and a celebration of survival. Everyone was coming, the new council, reformed and representative, the common folk who'd stood with her, the shifters who'd emerged from hiding, even some of the nobles who'd grudgingly accepted the new order. Lyra bustled past with a crate of wine. The caterers are here, and I swear if one more person asks me where to put the flowers, You're doing great, Elara said. I'm stressed. That too. Marine appeared, dressed in actual formal clothes for once. She looked deeply uncomfortable. How long do I have to stay? Until the speeches are done at minimum? There are speeches? 3 of them, Marin groaned. I hate speeches. Everyone hates speeches. Suffer with us. By sunset, the grounds were full. Torches lined the paths, casting warm light over faces new and familiar. Musicians played soft music. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread filled the air. Kale found Elara near the memorial stone they'd erected in her parents' honor. It was simple, just their names, dates, and the inscription. They lived with honor. They died with courage. They are not forgotten. You ready? He asked. No, but let's do it anyway. They walked to the raised platform together. The crowd quieted as Kyle began to speak. 5 years ago, 2 people were murdered in this house. Not in battle, not in self-defense, but in cold blood by someone who feared their existence. Taryn and Ilyana Voss were good people. Fair, kind, strong. They died protecting their daughter, and for 5 years the truth of their deaths was buried. He paused, looking out at the crowd. But truth has a way of surfacing, and tonight we honor not just the people who died, but the one who survived. Elara Voss refused to stay hidden, refused to be silenced, refused to accept that power could kill without consequence. Kale turned to her. She fought for justice when it would have been easier to run, and because of her courage, we're all standing on the edge of something better. He stepped aside, giving Elara the floor. She looked at the hundreds of faces watching her, people who'd helped, people who doubted, people who were still deciding what they thought. Her hand shook, but her voice was steady. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who got tired of being scared. She smiled slightly. Well, I'm still scared, but I'm not letting it control me anymore. For everyone here who's been told you're too weak, too common, too different, you're not. You're exactly what this realm needs. Your voices, your experiences, your refusal to accept things as they've always been. She touched the memorial stone. My parents taught me that power without compassion is just cruelty. That strength means protecting people, not dominating them. That family isn't just blood. It's the people who stand with you when everything falls apart. Her voice wavered. I miss them every day. But I'm grateful for the time I had with them. And I'm grateful for everyone who helped bring their killers to justice. She looked at Kyle, at Marin, at Lyra. I survived because I wasn't alone. None of us are. We're stronger together than any of us are apart. So tonight, we remember the dead. And tomorrow, we keep building the world they would have wanted to see. The crowd erupted in applause. Later, after the formal ceremonies ended and the party shifted into celebration, Elara found herself pulled from group to group. Shifters wanting to thank her for making it safe to exist openly. Common folk sharing their hopes for the new council. Even a few nobles tentatively offering support. It was overwhelming and exhausting and wonderful. Near midnight, she slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. Kale found her there, as she knew he would. Hiding? He asked. Breathing. There's a difference. He sat beside her. They watched the party continue without them, people laughing, dancing, living without fear for the first time in years. We did something good, Elara said quietly. Didn't we? We did something necessary. Whether it's good, that'll take time to know. Always so practical. Someone has to be. You're the idealist. Is that what I am? Among other things. Kyle took her hand, the one with the promise ring. What are you thinking? That a year ago I was drugged in a cabin, convinced I was nobody, waiting to die. And now, she gestured at the party, at the rebuilt house, at the life spreading around them. Now I have this. All of this. You earned it. Did I? Sometimes it feels like luck, like I stumbled from one thing to the next and somehow survived. That's not luck. That's resilience. Kale turned to face her. You know what I see when I look at you? What? Someone who was told she was a monster and refused to believe it. Someone who lost everything and built it back from nothing. Someone who could have chosen revenge and chose justice instead. He touched her face gently. I see someone who's going to change this realm, who's already changing it. I'm just one person. So was I, but together, he smiled. Together we're something more. Elara leaned into him, feeling the bond between them hum with warmth and strength. Whatever came next, political fights, resistance from old powers, the hard work of rebuilding, they'd face it together. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of transforming, not of her past, not of the future. She was Elara Voss, daughter of murdered nobles, survivor of erasure, shifter, fighter, and now, finally, free to be whoever she chose. The moon rose full and bright overhead, bathing the garden in silver light. Elara felt the familiar pull of transformation, but this time she didn't fight it. She let it wash over her, let her body shift and change, felt the power surge through her veins. When it passed, she was still herself, just more. Kyle watched her with those clear gray eyes that could finally see, and smiled. Beautiful, he said. Elara looked at the party, at the life blooming around them, at the future stretching out like an open road. She thought of her parents, of everything they'd given her, of the courage it took to keep fighting when the world wanted you gone. Yeah, she agreed. It really is. They sat together under the moon, a king who'd been blind and a girl who'd been erased, both of them, finally, impossibly, whole. The party continued around them, music and laughter rising into the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tomorrow, they'd have to keep building, keep fighting, keep proving that change was possible. But tonight, they'd won, and that was enough.